tuning in to episode 30 of the Rodeo Wagon podcast featuring Jimmy Elcock. This podcast is brought to you by Western Edge app and produced by Cosmic Cowboys Productions.
What's up, Kyle? You got me there, buddy?
Yeah, Jimmy.
How's it going, pal?
Good. Nice seeing you.
You too, man. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's crazy like how many people that you're kind of connected to indirectly. Just in like places you've been and stuff. I was just like looking through and like you freaking were in the Thunder days.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we had a show somewhat nearby, and this is all stuff we can get into, but I've always had a passion to be involved in the Western world and in Western sports. But music, lovingly so, has kind of almost been a little bit of a barrier to entry because just like anything in rodeo, it kind of has to consume you for you to get it to a certain tier.
Tell everybody a little bit about, I guess, what you do.
Yeah. So, and we're just to clarify, Kyle, we're rolling. We're good.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Just so you know, none of this, like, one of the things I've made it a point to do with my podcast is completely conversational. Nothing's prepped or planned. Unless there's a specific question I have, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, just roll and go. I'm fine with that.
So.
Yeah, well, you can steer me whatever way you like, but for those of you who don't know me, most people don't know me. I'm Jimmy Elcock. I'm a professional drummer and music director. I work primarily in commercial country music. For those of you who keep up with contemporary music, it's not always like being in a band the way the Rolling Stones were. A lot of times in commercial music, you have an artist and they hire sidemen. And that's what I am. I'm sort of a drummer for hire, band leader for hire, and I've made my career coming up through it all, working for different artists. And that's kind of that consumes most of my days.
How often do you stick with one artist versus, actually getting hired for a gig or whatever?
So it depends. The idea, every artist you sort of play with, I think the idea is longevity. You're always sort of shooting to stay with them as long as you can. Music's fickle. And it's not necessarily based on skill or talent. A lot of it is just timing and how cards fall. And so as an artist, as you come up in it as kind of a starving artist, you're always just sort of in survival mode. So I think you're always shooting for longevity, or maybe the better word would be consistency. You're shooting for consistency in a world that's very inconsistent. But at the same time, right now, like I have a full-time salary job. I'm fortunate enough to play for Mitchell Tenpenny right now. And I hope I'm there forever. I hope that lasts forever. But at the same time, if I have freedom in my schedule, I'm able to go play for other acts too. So you do take gigs knowing I might be filling in for a weekend. I might be filling in for a tour. Whatever it is. So I get to kind of piece it together as long as for me in my situation, I'm always there when Mitchell needs me.
Yeah. I wonder if it's similar to like a golf caddy would be where, golf caddy may tour with a specific guy, but, maybe if there's a break in the schedule. That's intriguing how that kind of works.
I've got, the sports analogies are good. I've learned whether it's rodeo, whether it's baseball, there's a lot more in common with professional touring in music than
it's the way my brain just works, and the travel part of it and all of that, like your contract. I mean, it's similar like the PBR. Okay, so there, you have, if you're on the UTB, you're required to go to so many events, and you're not allowed to go to an event competing against it. Like, so you can't go, if there's a UTB that weekend, you can't just go to a pro rodeo and skip. However, if there's no event that weekend, you can go wherever you want. You can basically just as a contractor,
Yeah. So it's definitely the same in that regard. I can relate a lot to it through that, especially the travel. I mean, you're just constantly traveling.
Have you been around like the rodeo scene like a lot, or what did that look like as far as music?
I can give you. It's kind of a long story, and I got a lot of layers to it. So I'll try to give you a somewhat abbreviated version. I live in Texas now, but I'm not originally from Texas. I have family here, but not originally from here. I grew up in the Northeast. I was originally from about 30 miles west of Boston, and then my family has a big rural property up in north central New Hampshire. And the reason that was kind of funny was because when a lot of people think of the Northeast, they probably think of New York City or Boston and just this giant urban metroplex, and that's all there is. And probably yourself, you've traveled enough to know it's not only that. You have your city centers, but then you have beautiful countryside and mountains and ocean. And
Majority of it's probably that, to be honest.
yeah, and but maybe more importantly, or not more importantly, but it's culturally different. Like in such a short, the states are so small and in such a small space compared to anything here out west. You just have such a different culture shift kind of in
Mhm.
that small geographical region. So I grew up kind of a funny kid in that I was going to middle school and high school, in a suburb of Boston where it's not downtown at all. It's a suburb, but I'm kind of a rural feeling suburb. It looks like the Patriot. It's like stone walls and all that beautiful New England kind of
Sure.
architecture, all of that. But then the family property was originally a hunting camp that they acquired in the late 1800s or early 1900s, and then ran it as a summer camp to follow because I had relatives that were school teachers and whatnot, and they realized they could kind of run this thing year round and make money over summer breaks.
Sure.
But what that gave me growing up kind of in both places, I kind of helped. You were sort of a property manager, property caretaker with my dad up there and all my friends up there. It was culturally so different. And that's where I got exposed to horses and 4-H, and I got exposed to whatever was FFA at the time and and all of that. And I grew up loving to shoot. I wanted to fish. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to hike. I wanted to camp. I just wanted to be kind of an outdoor kid in the dirt. I loved my sister, loved riding horses. I did as well. She always probably had a leg up on me, but I picked that up as well and really fell into that as kind of a secondary hobby and passion to my music. Music was kind of always something I was naturally gifted at the same time, but my parents were great enough to support me in that and pursued it myself and then pursued it through lessons. So I kind of had these two things running parallel.
Yeah.
And then I knew that I had these two passions sort of. But over here in this outdoor Western horse, like I wasn't a cowboy. Like I don't ever want to call myself a cowboy, but I knew that I was passionate about all of that.
Yeah.
And somewhere when I was 12 or 13, my mom's family is still out west in Colorado and kind of spread all over. But my family took a trip to Triangle Sea Ranch out in Dubois, Wyoming. And I'd been out west kind of visiting family my whole life. And I kind of knew that this bigger culture and lifestyle surrounded it all out there. And I never had a way to really access that in New England the way I wanted to.
Sure.
But I ended up 12 or 13 at Triangle Sea Ranch, and I sort of befriended the Garnet boys that the family owned it at the time, and some of the Wrangler friends there. And it just was kind of it was a moment that changed my life. It sort of painted. I realized all of a sudden that wait, there's this ranching lifestyle that people grow up in where they practice these skills, and there's horsemanship and there's track trips and there's ranch rodeos and there's professional rodeos. And it just sort of, I lost my mind. And then all of a sudden bring in country music and it all made sense. And it just sort of kind of gave this sort of life, or like this, you can do this
Yeah.
aspect to my other passion, which was all this. It kind of gave me a place to pull it all together. But what ended up happening was, as much as music was always still a love, I left that ranch and came back to New England and kind of felt like, well, what do I do now? And so that's where I started, trying to pursue. I worked at different, boarding facilities, riding lessons. I ran as many gymkhanas as I could. I had a couple great mentors that had moved from out west back east, and I learned a little bit of team roping, and I was terrible at it all, but I loved it, and I just ate it up and continued to eat it up. And I've just sort of tried to eke as much information and knowledge out of all that as I could. And that's always sort of continued alongside my music, even though I've really made, music my full-time career.
It's fascinating too. You put it into that, context, because the Western culture, especially when you get, into, if you actually get into Texas and Wyoming and those cowboy cultures, it's so much different. Even like me from Missouri, horsemen or the cowboy culture, if you want to call it Missouri. It's not real authentic cowboy like you think of, Texas, West Texas, Montana, some of those places. And I just did you're wearing that rodeo time hat. Jordan Halverson, I did a podcast with her, and she was
Sure.
talking about that
She
from.
gave me this. Thank you, Jordan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
She was talking about going from North Carolina, and then going out to
Yeah.
Texas, and like the culture, the culture and the tradition that's deeply rooted within that culture, when they do those, cattle drives and the brandings and that's a whole different world from what you would see in the East Coast, which is going to be probably tons of cultures, because historically that's a trading route, and so the East Coast has seen probably who knows how many different cultures come through there, you know.
Right. And
So
that's something I certainly was. This is Skunk, by the way, my lovely cat. Parents, rescued her. But no, it's something you're absolutely right. And Jordan and I actually spoke a little bit about that. And it's very true. And I do want to say I always had a reverence for what that is. I never want to come across as someone who claimed that I came up in that or that I'm somehow as familiar with other people. I really have always respected it. And and what's fun for me is that now living, and I can get into kind of how this transpired, but now living in Texas and being able to be exposed to a lot more and to learn a lot more, even though I have this full blown other career, it's really just been able to afford me kind of a freedom in exploring it because I don't have something I'm trying to prove. I'm not a fifth generation cowboy. I'm not anything like that. And it's just something I've always had a pure interest in and a pure passion about. And it's kind of just afforded me this, I apologize, afforded me this freedom to always kind of go after it and pursue of as much or as little of it as I
yeah.
want to.
I, I mean, I'm
And
in
it's
the same boat in a lot of ways. Like, I grew up being a horseman and stuff with part of it, but that whole cowboy culture is something that's still foreign to me. And the bull riding, the bull riding is my cat's on my van right now.
well, we didn't play enough today, so that's
I,
clearly
I
my
looked
my
over
issue.
there and she's on the windshield. But the bull riding has given me an opportunity to dive into that while also doing what I love it, which is competing. So
Sure.
like I've learned more about the cowboy culture and been introduced to a lot more through bull riding and getting to, travel. But even like horsemanship in Missouri, it's not cowboy like out in
Right.
Texas. It depends on how you're defining cowboy, yes, but
Sure.
traditionally, a real cowboy culture, which the entire culture is built upon cowboying, that's a
Sure.
different culture than like, hey, you know, a Missouri culture is a bunch of rednecks, work ethic, blue collar. We have horses because that's fun.
Right. There's a lot of ways to ride a horse, I
Right?
mean,
Yeah.
and accomplish ranching, activities and whatnot. Everyone's got different methods, but you're right. That what you see out west and the longevity of these ranches here in Texas or the ranches I saw in Wyoming. I mean, it's part of our country's fabric. It's part of our country's DNA. But I also something I love about it is just I think the respect it breeds and the lifestyle it breeds and what it does about preserving values and traditions and not to get all hokey about it, but I mean, I think that stuff matters, especially in a world today that moves so quick. And I've always tried to take the best parts I've seen in that cowboy culture and I've begun to be exposed to in the cowboy culture and try to bring that to my life in the ways that it's appropriate. And it's something I'll always want to have respect for and continue to learn about.
Yeah.
When we kind of to follow up on your initial comment about all the people I'm loosely connected with, I think I've gotten it from different people in the PBR or around Western sports, kind of like, who is this guy that always seems to be popping up and around and wearing a hat or not wearing a hat, but then he's drumming? Like, what's the deal here? What's the deal here? And so, as best as I can introduce myself or explain to anybody, I had moved a little bit more on the music side of things. I had moved to Nashville. I guess I should back up. I left New England and I did go to college. I went to college at Loyola University, New Orleans,
Okay.
which was interesting. I went to school there for music performance and music business. from middle school, like I was telling you about. I'm so ADD, I jump around too much. But middle school, I was basically going to school an extra day a week at a conservatory. I would drive all the way into Boston and I would take courses that were giving me college credit as a performance major. So
Sure.
at a young age, I was fortunate. I got into this program and it taught me an awful lot on the formal side of music. And it's intense. It's kind of like if you ever see the movie Whiplash, it's not as intense as the movie is, but it's music in a different way because you're learning, you're kind of with, you all of a sudden go from being kind of the, if I'm so bold, maybe the big fish in the small pond with your buddies in your school or whatnot. And then all of a sudden, all the big fish are in one spot.
Yeah.
And so you realize, oh man, I have a lot to learn. You kind of feel competitive all of a sudden. There's juries at the end of it. It's pretty intensive stuff. Flash forward, college was great, but by the time I got to college, I felt almost a little bit burned out on music. I'd been doing it so intensely for so long, playing piano, trumpet, drums, a little guitar, all this stuff, learning all your theory and your ear training. I kind of got to college and went, I still just want to be kind of a college kid and figure out life. I moved so far away from home. I'm in Louisiana. I was excited because now I know what's around. There's a little bit more access to, rodeos and all this stuff around me, even though I was in New Orleans. And so, ironically, my first few
Asian
years,
food. I bet you ate some of that. Every
that's a whole other podcast, man.
man,
I
that's
still bring boudin back every time I'm down there.
I
But
wish there was more. I wish rodeo took me to Louisiana more.
sure, I feel like yeah. I mean,
Just for the food. If it I
Lake Charles, yeah. I mean,
Oh
all of
man.
it. I'm with you on that. We'll have to get some sometime for sure. But speaking of that region, I realized that there were touring pros and challenger events and
Yeah.
all this stuff going on down there. And I've always kind of been, I'm not very bashful. So I don't mind just inserting myself into a situation and saying, hey, I know nothing and I want to learn. And so I actually said, you know what? Let me pause this music stuff for a second. I almost became a little disinterested, which almost, I never meant it in a negative way, but I said, forget the gigs for now. I'm going to just drive to these events. And I would kind of throw on my hat and I'd go in there and I realized, unlike music, there's not a lot of security if you show up at these events when you get there kind of earlier in the morning. And so all the stock contractors are pulling up and I
Mhm.
would kind of just be hanging around and I'd introduce myself. And then I'd volunteer to lend a hand, say, I'm not claiming to know anything, but I'll help you out. And so I ended up kind of, no one, I don't think, knew really where I came from, but these stock contractors I was a little bit familiar and I used to show up at the events and help. I'd, like help sort some of the bulls. I'd learn how to flank some bulls. Like I was in there. I had no business, I had no business being in there, no credentials, but
Is
I
that
ended up on the buck and shoots and I was a kid in the candy shop. I mean, I
I bet.
lost my mind over it. And so that's where, and I really was a fan of the PBR. I love the NFR too, PRCA, everything.
Right.
But I really became a fan of the PBR back in middle school. Middle school after I left Wyoming, I just realized that there was something I could kind of follow that gave me a taste of this all the time, even if I was stuck in New England and I
Well, the
didn't know enough
probably
to get to Canada or the regional circuits.
probably too, like, we're talking about cultures. Well, there's a big difference between the rodeo culture and bull riding culture.
Foreign culture.
And that bull riding culture is going to be more similar to what you're used to with your bands. So if you enjoy that, then
Yep.
bull riding for sure. Even me, and this is just different. Some people they like an old school, and there's some venues out there and competitions that are like, really old school and traditional, and I love those events. But for me, I love a loud, almost like one of those stadiums where it's not very wide, it's just very tall and
Sure.
compact, and like I like that atmosphere better. But there's some
Sure.
guys that like more of a rodeo where it's, laid back, slow, guys are drinking beer the entire perf.
Right. The more no, I like the
You
show.
know?
I like that moment to
Yeah.
hit. It's
Yeah.
fun, and that's probably why I've always loved rough stock so much in general.
In general,
But the
yeah.
PBR, but the PBR did, yeah, it did feed that beast for me, so to speak. And that's why I sought it out once I got to college, and I kind of wanted to figure out what I could do in this. But I did eventually smarten up and realize that I was way too late to start riding bulls or do anything like that. I mean, I sat on them? Yeah, but have
Yeah.
I ridden? So it was interesting, and unfortunately, at this point, I gotta watch, the digits. But get the job going. But it's certainly that's kind of how I got to my passion for all of it, and moved to Nashville after I graduated school, started my professional career. We can get into any of that if you'd like
Yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I'd love to hear
Um,
more about, kind of your music, and obviously you love it. So
yeah, and obviously,
all you need to talk about.
yeah, it's something. It was that thing, like I said, alongside everything Western and rodeo. It was something was good at.
Yeah.
And it's something I pursued, and I loved it. I think ironically, I got a little taste, a little bit of competing I did in the horse world and whatnot. I kind of got a taste for the road in the
Okay.
sense of traveling and kind of there being a
Yeah.
community and a culture and an ecosystem around that, kind of
Yeah.
like the same people showing up in a different place all the time, and you kind of have your family and that culture that moves with you.
Yep.
Um,
That's
I
unique, but
knew,
that's not, I don't think that's not every, body that even travels. So that is something that's interesting, because that's unique to bull riding too. It's just
sure,
people, it's not a different person every weekend.
sure. But yeah, I loved it. I loved like the trailers parking, the tailgate, so to speak. Like I love that. And so when I finished college and I moved to Nashville because the whole time I was in college and when I smartened up and refocused on my music, I was trying to think of, okay, I like traveling. I've always had that wanderlust, that adventure. Let's see the world. Let's get out. Life's too short. So I knew that I didn't want to just be a studio musician or someone who was stuck playing in one city or in one bar. As much as I'd take anything I could get, I knew that the long-term goal was to be touring in music.
Yeah.
But I was thinking to myself, when you're studying music like that, uh, you're studying so many styles of music. So it doesn't matter what you like or what you're putting on in the truck at the end of the day. You're going to study jazz and you're going to study blues and bossa novas and Latin music and West African music and rock and pop and reggae and all this stuff.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Is that normal? So most people, when they think of, okay, country artists, I don't know how many times I've really thought about, like, okay, so these people, that are heavily in the music industry, like, how well versed are they in different styles and cultures of music?
So
Is it normal for people to be,
I would,
is the whole department of putting people in categories, labeling people in categories, is that more of a facade that's seen but not really there, versus like when you get down to musicians being musicians? And I
I
guess,
would say it's it's a multi-layered answer. The easy answer is yes. It's somewhat of a facade, but it's not a facade in a disingenuous way. And what I mean by it
right,
is
yeah,
this. What I mean by it is this. Again, I mentioned earlier me being a sideman as opposed to a full-fledged band member. Here's the difference, and here's why it matters. And this will answer your question, I think.
all right,
If I am Keith Richards in the Rolling Stones, I met Mick Jagger when I was in whatever, they were in high school together or whatnot, and they kind of put the band together and they're messy, and maybe they played with some other friends in different bands, but these guys come up in a garage. They both agree, hey, we love the blues, we love R&B, we love like rock and roll. Let's do this, and they kind of piece together the Rolling Stones, and it takes on its own life, and that band grows, and it becomes one of the biggest bands in the world. Or maybe it, could have failed in a different situation, but they're a band, right? They didn't have anything else going. It kind of didn't matter. Keith was the guy that had the guitars at the time. Mick was going to be the front man. Charlie's going to hit the drums, and that's just kind of how it happens. That's kind of how it happens.
huh,
You can get away with just playing what you're passionate about and what you like.
yeah,
It certainly would help him as a musician if he knew all those styles. I'm not saying he doesn't, but
but sure,
he had to do just that. If you're me, if you say, okay, I'm not, and I played in bands plenty, but I'm not necessarily in a band. I'm not going to have the same slice of the financial pie as like the Rolling Stones would, where they just take it and divide it 5 ways and,
yeah,
management gets their whatever and they go away. If I'm going to be playing for an artist, I win and lose. I don't get the same piece of the pie, but if that artist's career starts to not go so great, I
then
can kind of in a courteous way, I can get out of that and still have a career with a different act.
sure,
So the grass is always greener and there's pluses and minuses to different things. But to actually answer your question, what that meant for me is I can't just know what I like, because when I'm trying to make a break for catch a break and build my reputation, my playing reputation, my personal reputation, my name, I need to be able to say yes to pretty much anything that's going to come my way.
Yeah, the
So
wider.
one day I could be playing for a female singer songwriter where I have to be able to pull off the best Linda Ronstadt, Stevie Nicks, brushes, light touch, soft rock feel. But then the next day I might be hired by Mitchell Tenpenny, who grew up in the like hardcore scene and was a screamer and a drummer, and he wants like the double kick and like the intense stuff. And I have to be able to wear both hats back to back. So
Yeah.
if I don't, so when you see commercial music, whether you're going to a Dua Lipa show or you're going to see Jason Aldean or you're going to see, you know, Luke Combs, those guys on stage, they're not there. I mean, you can't play music you don't enjoy. You have to find, I
Yeah.
truly believe that. You have to be able to find something that you enjoy about the music or the music as a whole to be able to execute it authentically.
Right.
But they had to know different styles to get enough calls and enough people saying, "Hey, I want you to play for me," to be able to do that.
Sure.
So
So, and
that's kind of how it worked.
yeah, and I
I
think
just happened to be the guy that also loved all this stuff on, you know, in the Western sports world and rodeo world. And I was kind of a country kid. And so as I'm thinking, do I go to LA, go to New York? I'm like the whole time it's right in front of my face. Why don't you just play country music and move to Nashville? So
Nashville. Yeah.
so I did, and I, you know, started to catch my breaks from there. Jason Aldean's band, they had a little production company at the time who was producing Thompson Square and some different artists. And Rich, Jason's drummer, took me under his wing, and as he's done for many people, but was extremely motivating to me and encouraging, and gave me every tool I could possibly have needed for success and helped me grow with it. So those guys were kind of the catalyst in me moving to town. But once I got there, I grounded out with so many different artists. Some guys that have become great writers today, some people you would never know. My first real consistent gig was actually Jamie Lynn Spears, Britney Spears' sister.
Yeah. Okay.
She had been writing in Nashville for a while and decided to kind of make a go as an artist as well. And she put her faith in me, and I put her band together, and I had great years touring with her. And I know, you know, there's a lot surrounding that family, but I have nothing but great things to say about them, and they were so kind to me. And that really sort of, I looked as that was my first real professional in the spotlight gig. We were thrown into a lot fast, especially with her last name. There was just a different attention
Sure.
on that gig
Right.
way earlier than a lot of artists would ever have that type of attention.
It's
So
even
that was interesting. But from there, I continued to play with more and more acts and piece together my journey and kind of.
it's fascinating how that works. Like, even in the bull riding, like I can remember a time when I was kind of like at the beginning stages of like it's almost again, going back to cultures and all of these different like getting into that culture where it's like now like it's just a part of me and all of my buddies and like I'm in the middle of it and all of it's connected. Whereas at the beginning when you're kind of entering into it, especially you got to think, in sports, the good analogy, like all of these sports have different levels and each level is going to have its own, you know, culture that you kind of have to, be get into. Does that make sense? Uh-oh, I think we're there we go.
Got you. You hear me?
Where did I lose you at? What was it? Where
Just
was it?
you were just talking about that with your other bull riders, like uh
Yeah, yeah, like you get into, the entry point into like a different level, like as a professional, in any
sure.
industry, like, as you transition into, especially when you get into like what you're talking about, you're getting into a whole different level of music and that whole culture that's around it, and you start networking with people. But it seems like once you get there, there is so much, and it draws so much focus that you don't really like think about it while it's happening. It's just because it takes so much focus to be successful, and then next thing you know, you're in it for 5 years, and you're like, oh wow, you know.
Trial by fire. Yeah, and that's how music was. It really, and again, it's kind of the person I am. I'm kind of an all or nothing guy anyway. I'm going to give something my all and
Sure.
have the blinders on everything else maybe. But I did. I had nothing could have taken me away from that goal. And I did. I just tried to be so intentional about everything I did in making that career happen, and find, as much consistency or as much work as I could in it. And, and I've been very fortunate, in the time I've been doing it, to have some great success. But
I think that is a recipe to success. When people talk about, especially now I'm a father, I got two kids, and I think about like, how am I going to kind of teach them? But one thing that, I've learned from my own career, but also from looking at other people's careers is, find something that you're passionate about. Yes, but find something that you are passionate about and you're good at, and you're good
sure.
at it, and you can make money doing it, and feed that. Okay. And
Yeah.
then you'll have other passions that you can feed for hobbies. You can do that, feed those, but find something you're good at, find out how you can, maybe monetize it, and be super focused on that one thing. What's up, everybody? I'm thrilled to announce a fantastic partnership between the Rodeo Wagon podcast and Rodeo Life Official. Rodeo Life isn't just a coffee brand, it's a veteran-owned business that epitomizes the principles of hard work, dedication, and perseverance in all their products. As an avid consumer of Rodeo Life coffee, I am proud to align myself with a company that mirrors my values and resonates with our audience. Supporting this veteran-owned business is not only a testament to our shared ethos, but also a way to give back to those who have served our country. This partnership promises exciting content, collaborations, and surprises for all our listeners and the rodeo community. You can anticipate special episodes featuring the Rodeo Life experts, and even a chance to win some Rodeo Life merchandise. We look forward to this journey with Rodeo Life and the enriching experience it will bring our audience. Join us as we venture into this partnership, fueled by a passion for rodeo and a great cup of Rodeo Life coffee. Stay tuned for more exciting updates and the amazing things to come from the Rodeo Wagon podcast and Rodeo Life Official. Make sure you go to rodeolifeofficial.com and check out all their sweet merch. Are you searching for that perfect statement? Look no further than Bluegrass Engraving, where creativity meets craftsmanship. Their specialty lies in creating custom buckles and dip cans, but that's not all. They redefine elegance with an exquisite line of jewelry, and for those who appreciate a little flair, check out their engraved guns collection. At Bluegrass Engraving, they don't just create products, they craft experiences. Visit Bluegrass Engraving today and let them turn your visions into engraved realities. Bluegrass Engraving, where artistry meets authenticity. Hey there, folks. I want to tell you about my favorite cowboy hat brand, Sombrero Brands. As a professional bull rider, I know how important it is to have a hat that not only looks good, but can withstand the toughest rides out there. And that's exactly what Sombrero Brands delivers. Their hats are custom fitted and shaped to perfection, with a level of attention to detail that's hard to find these days. But what really sets Sombrero Brands apart is the fact that they're a family-owned and operated business. Mark and Kendall Holler, the owners, and their daughter Sarah, who's only 13 but already a hat-making prodigy, are all passionate about their craft. They know what it takes to make a cowboy hat that can stand up to anything the rodeo circuit can throw at it. And get this. The founder's grandfather, Polly Holler, was born and raised at South Camp on the 4-6's ranch. These folks have got cowboy blood running through their veins, and it shows in every hat they make. That's why I'm proud to have Sombrero Brands as a major sponsor for my podcast, the Rodeo Wagon podcast. So if you're in the market for a hat that's tough enough to handle anything the rodeo throws at it, give Sombrero Brands a try. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. My children and stuff, it's, like the one thing that I know is if you find what you're passionate about and that you can, monetize, fuel that, be very focused on that one thing. You don't need to know 5 different things in case one fails. You need to
Sure.
really focus on one thing. And even if that doesn't work out the way you thought it would, you'll develop the skills that
And it
will,
might lead you to something different.
it'll
Yeah.
open up, doors will open up as you go, but fueling that focus, because our culture right now with social media and our phone, it wants to distract us. We
Sure.
look at clips on, Instagram, and we can't pay attention for more than 5 seconds.
Sure.
But the, successful people are able to focus on one thing very intently for a long period of time.
Yeah. And I think what I realized too is once you focus on that thing to get you to a certain place, that can then open up more opportunities, which is why
Yeah.
I kind of always felt like I gave myself permission to do it, because I knew that I might have these other interests and passions in life but I'm not gonna, the best and the fastest or the most effective way for me to get to those things is to get really good at this one thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I've laid my focus. And that's what the irony of it is. So I moved to Nashville. I guess I was there off and on from 2010 on when I was finishing school. And then I moved permanently in 2012. I'm 34 now. Um, and, and ironically had this consistent career up until COVID hit and the pandemic hit, and music was dead in the water,
Yeah.
especially me, who's a touring guy.
Yeah, sure.
And that kind of, this kind of all feeds itself and brings us back to, I kind of, I had to figure out who I was all of a sudden without this thing that I had just spent the last decade being so intensely focused on. Decade more, 20 years. I mean, from the time you start playing, I guess. But
Yeah, right.
professionally a decade. And so I kind of went, whoa. And this whole time I'm drumming, I'm building my Rolodex, I'm taking these band leader jobs, which kind of means you're helping orchestrate shows and you're sort of the putting the music together for the acts.
Okay.
And to put it simply. And I was taking all these gigs, but you also know that music's going through a tumultuous time with streaming and all
Yeah,
the stuff you hear about. And so I knew, thanks to great mentors and my own experiences, that I had to have diverse income streams, and I wanted to have a lot of irons in the fire, because you can't put all your, you can't cash in all on one card or one chip, whatever. You have to kind of diversify that.
sure.
And so for me, I have different ventures and things I've done in music, from recording to lessons and things like that. I still love doing those things, but something that I realized over the pandemic was, hey, maybe this is a chance for me to sort of get back interested in everything, not interested, but to actually get involved with everything Western again, to put it
Yeah,
simply.
yeah, right.
And I called up friends that I stayed in touch with, and I ended up helping do some marketing for seed stock cattle, and they brought me into that world. And next thing you know, over the pandemic, I'm flying to different auctions and helping do the marketing for sales. I decided to move here to DFW because I could get plugged in a little bit more in the Western world here, and kind of develop the skills that I had to put a little bit of pause on,
Uh-huh.
and kind of pick up a hobby again and kind of
Yeah.
just figure out, hey, how's this all going to work? And ironically, that's when, a lot of the PBR was, moving here, or just creating a footprint here. And I got plugged in, and I still do the cattle. I work for Visit Fort Worth and the Fort Worth
Yeah.
herd. And
I was
I
gonna
do
ask you about that.
I do the cattle drives and the stock.
How did you get into the cattle drives? I wonder how many times have you done that, or how many times do you do it?
I mean, I've done more than I can count. I,
At
I
the
mean,
stockyard.
I was full time over the pandemic, but I was also working as kind of their barn attendant, taking care of a lot of the horses and whatnot at the state police facility
It's
that
wild.
they
I can't tell you
acquired.
how many times I have went to the stockyards and then cattle.
I know.
You know the
So
worst part
it's
is when they're
I
doing it and you're waiting, you got your gear bag and they close that gate, when they
I know,
I
I
mean I'm
know.
like, I
I got to
gotta
kick
wait.
everyone out.
Yeah.
I know. I know. I get all the dirty looks now. No, I'll tell you what, man. So I couldn't say enough great things about that gig and about Visit Fort Worth and the herd. So I understand, like on one level, you're dressed up in the garb. You kind of look a little hokey. You're in the 1800s. You're dressed up like the drover. Like, I get it. I get it. Say no more. And so you kind of read it at that. And I was like, well, it's a chance to get on a horse again. I can kind of move some cattle around or something or whatnot. And I kind of didn't know what I was getting into. I truly was in the stockyards one day, and I walked up to the guys on the horses. I was like, who do I talk to do this? I was like, I was bored to tears. Music's dead. I'm living here. I don't know anybody. I'm like, how do I do this? And they were, and knowing too, New England kid, you
Yeah.
know, I can ride well. I mean, it's not like I don't know
Yeah,
any,
yeah, sure.
I know my enough,
Yeah.
uh, but I didn't think maybe I'd get hired for it. I didn't, I think they'd look at me twice and go, what the heck, drummer, what is this? But they did. And I ended up loving it because you see the cattle drives twice a day, every day. And I love doing those. But take that's all you see on the surface. What you don't see is that you have the city's resources at your disposal. Kristen Jaworski, our trail boss, some of the other senior staff there, all the way up to Bob Jameson, who's the head of Visit Fort Worth. They give us so much access and many resources and training. And because we are in the stockyards, the best ropers in the world come through, the best, horsemen in the world come through, the best, cowboys, cowgirls in any capacity come through, and they have these incredible relationships with many of them. And everyone is so willing to generate to and generous to donate their time and resources to us. So here I am getting paid to do the cattle drives twice a day, but I might go spend an afternoon working on my horsemanship with, Lord knows who, or this, guys telling me about cattle handling. And just like for me, a kid that came from New England, I have never had that access before, let alone get paid to do it. So you see, the cattle drives twice a day, but the guys that grew up on cow calves that I'm working with are telling me, vets there, here's how, squeeze shoots, and this is how we, administer medicine, this and that, and even more about horsemanship and roping and pressure and cattle. And so it's like, for me, I wish I could go be a intern out with Dale and all those guys, but my schedule wouldn't allow
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Take me. But for me, it's just been this amazing experience of, I know how it might look to some people, especially people that have been in that world forever. But the truth is there's great people a part of that program, incredible people leading that program, and they're so generous to us to teach. And I just feel free to come in and say, I don't know anything, let me learn. And when I come off that road, because Nashville tour is different, we're really gone Wednesday through Saturday or Sunday. When I come off the road and I get to do that,
Then yeah,
it's just the best.
yeah.
But they have a great full-time staff, so I don't always get to go in as much as I like anymore. So I'm actively trying to find more ways to just learn and be involved
Well, and
here in
you make a good
DFW
point,
or with the
because where
PBR,
you're at,
whatever,
where you're at right there is, like you're right, the best, of the Western world when it comes to the sport of rodeo or
Yeah,
equine in general. Like the best horsemen in the world, best
sure.
rodeo athletes, like that, they all go through Fort Worth. I mean,
Right.
that is, the epicenter really of rodeo. I mean, when you think of how many events go through there. I mean, it's crazy to think about. I mean, they have a PBR there every single Thursday now.
Every Thursday, right? And I love like it's on Sundays. I mean, it's
They do stuff
Luke,
all
everything he
the
has
time.
going. It's like it's great. And that's why I wanted to be here
And
to
I
get
think
more.
that's another thing too, networking in general.
Yeah,
Networking in
absolutely.
general. Have you met Vinny?
Not yet. I know of him, but I haven't met him yet.
Okay, so he's telling me about great guy, and he comes from, he's from, the East. So he's from Jersey, New Jersey,
Sure.
and so he comes from that. But he was telling me about, I forget, I think it was a model. I don't know if she was like part of like Miss USA. Anyway, it was a model, and she made it a point to where every single one of those competitions she went to, she networked with somebody. Because she knew
Sure.
that when she was done, that all that networking was going to benefit her. So she had built up over 10, 12 years a list of contacts and just networking. And
Sure.
like, as far as you, and like, if you have the opportunity, you might as well put yourself in a position where you can network, because you never know in life what door may
It's gonna
open,
happen.
and you may be in the right place because of that. So I think that's just a tidbit as well, especially because we also get so focused as athletes, I'm sure with you and your touring, that it almost just like, in general, like life just is like almost on repeat. Like you're you get stuck in that focus, and I think that's important to have that routine, but also to know like, hey, you know,
You gotta have something going outside
yeah.
of it
I
too.
think a lot of athletes, a lot of people, they mature into that, but it's
Sure.
always, if you would have known that sooner, maybe you would have,
Could have given you a leg up. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think it's something you really do have to be intentional about. And that's kind of what I've done. We were Mitchell, who I'm with now and hope to be, like I said, for as long as I possibly could. Love that guy. We were hired, the PBR hired us to play World Finals, I guess, 2 years ago. But we had weather issues and OSHA, you can't raise a state. So we couldn't end up playing. But
Hmm.
I got to meet finally. I was like, oh my gosh, my worlds are colliding. I finally got to meet some people with the PBR who have been so kind to me, just bringing me around and introducing me to folks and inviting me to events and just making me feel appreciated for being such a fan.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's kind of how it happened for me with all of this. And that's how you see the people I've loosely been connected to. I'm not, there's nothing I'm trying to go after in some
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of very specific way, but I know that I love building this network within that community because one day I hope to have some sort of way of being involved,
sure.
maybe in a professional capacity, you know, in addition to my music, but in a way that makes sense for whoever it is. I don't know if that's going to be stock contracting. Who knows? Stock contracting. You don't know if that's going to be in, you know, marketing. You don't know if it's partnership. Like, yeah, you just don't know what. But there's already some sort of kinship between music and country music and rodeo and all of that. And it's just been fun to kind of be able to keep a foot in each world and kind of create some
Yeah.
handshakes across the line. It just kind of geeks me out. If anything else, I'm just having fun getting to explore the world of it all. So
Have you got to meet very many bull riders like in the PBR?
I have through a few friends that I have in the PBR now. I'm certainly not. I don't have any close buddies or anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
sure.
everyone who I've met has been so kind and had some fun nights. Uh, you know, at events, outside of
Who?
events. I got to meet Andrew Alvidrez through Little
That's
Coffee and
that's
Josh.
funny.
Who I just that guy. I'm such a fan of that guy.
He
I'll
just
always be a fan of the hardest worker in the room, and I just think the best. Yep, yep,
just,
yep.
just
I mean,
that's
how can
funny.
you not love it, man? Just complete focus all the time. I got to meet him. I've got to meet a number of the guys just on the tour, I got to meet Mason Taylor out in Vegas at the NFR. There's been a handful. Everyone's just been nothing but Zeke. They're nothing but kind and
Yeah,
polite to me. I don't know how many of them remember me, but I certainly appreciate what they do, and
yeah.
I'm impressed by them, and you know, I
There,
just think the world of what they do.
you're touring all the time. I mean, between when you take out like the specifics, I think a lot of it's probably super similar. And
I
what
think
you.
so. I'd like to think so. I mean, sure, you have. I think what's interesting, and you can tell me if I'm accurate on this or not, because I haven't walked in your shoes as a bull rider, but it's kind of funny. Everything you do during the week, like, because I have off days too. Like I said, I'm not touring for 3 months and then
Right.
off. I have that sort of the weekend performance routine, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So everything I'm doing during the week at home, whether I'm doing the cattle drives or I'm on the Peloton or whatever I'm doing here, it's kind of like something, it's always marinating back here. Like this morning, I was working on set lists for stuff we have this weekend. And I
Uh-huh.
went to I kind of know health is wealth. So like my body as a drummer, I'm a little more physical in some ways than other instruments. So I'm always taking care of that. I'm always kind of trying to treat myself right during the weeks because I know when I go out to the shows on the weekend, one, everything is guided by that performance.
Yeah.
So when you wake up on that show day, for me, yeah, I'm not nervous, I'm not stressed, but everything I do leading up to that moment is somehow preparing me for that moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, do I
Right.
get my workout in? Did I get enough sleep in? What did I eat? What am I doing? Okay, are there social engagements that day, or is there
Yeah.
obligations I have that day? How do those fit into the schedule? Is that going to allow me enough time to be ready to do what I have to do here? Did sound check go well? Did we have to overhaul anything to make the show happen?
How
And then it
many?
all builds up to that moment. You're with your buddies, you're all doing this, the whole unit comes together, the production comes together, and then it happens. And then better or worse, it's over. And then there's kind of this release, and then it becomes social, and there's like the nightlife portion of it.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden you're rolling down the road and rinse and repeat the next day. So it's just kind of it's very similar, I think, in that regard. At least that's how I see it in my head. But you can tell me if that feels at
No,
all
I
accurate.
think it is. The I think there's some complexities like, and I don't know if you face this, like bull riders, we hit such a high on the weekend. Generally, there's a couple day period where you go through that blue syndrome where your adrenal glands are just like freaking shot because you just stuck them, as high as they could probably go on the weekend.
Yeah.
So like learning like, and then so then it becomes immediately after, that performance where that's the whole week really is built up to that point. Then it's almost like you have to spend an entire week regaining and try at some point, like, because I feel like during the season you're traveling so much of it is maintenance. And
Yeah.
if you can, like for athletes, it's progression. Like if I can find a way to get better during this time, that's good, but like a lot of it's maintenance physically and stuff, as far as that whole each sleep patterns, all of that, it changes.
Yeah.
If I'm not
Granted,
competing, like right now, for instance, okay, I have been eating like 4,200 calories a day because
Right.
I've been hurt. I had
You've had your shoulder, right? Your rotator and everything.
so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
trying to gain weight. I'm eating a ton of
Right.
weight. Like I'm starting to see it in my face where it's getting a little fatter, and that's good because I need that because I'm trying
Right.
to put on weight. And but when I go to competing, like it'll be a whole different schedule. I'll be cut down. My diet will look different, like during the week. Like
Right. No, everything revolves around your goal.
but then there's guys out there that live by the seat of their pants, and I have no idea how they do it, and nothing's organized. Is that the thing? Are there guys in your industry that that's the case? Or
Sure.
there
I mean,
or
sure. I mean, there are. I think again, there's an irony because
some of them, by the way,
everyone.
in this sport, by the way, some of those are the best. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they're not good. That's not what I'm saying. But
Listen, I think it's to be as fair as I can. The answer is yes, but I think ultimately, end of the day, at least for me, it's work hard, play hard.
yeah,
So every bus we get on, so to speak, every artist has sort of a different culture around them that they get to build. Like, there's consistencies through everything, but every culture is different. So some bands are party bands. Some bands are everyone just kind of drinks green tea and goes to bed at the end of the night, like whatever. And as it grows, people have different
that's
routines.
it. That's exactly the same. Yep, you just said it. That is exactly
So for
that.
me, I'm a work hard. Like the play hard doesn't feel good to me unless I've earned it. Like that's not because I'm holier than thou. That's just how I work. I want to work really hard to get all my stuff together so that when I do kick back and play hard, it's because I've earned it. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But at the end of the day, we still have a job to do. So people, how they behave, might look a certain way, but there's got to be some sort of intention behind it all to still be at least a side man in the commercial world that I'm in,
Right.
because you have to play nice with others. It's not like
Well, it's
Mick Jagger can't just
yeah,
kick Keith Richards out. You have to get along and play nice with others, because you stick 8 to 12 of us guys on a tour bus on a submarine and send you off. You play on stage for an hour and a half, but you're in close quarters, sleeping,
yeah,
every living life on top of each other. Good days, bad days,
yeah.
add a little too much fun sometimes. It gets crazy. So you have to be able to navigate the social element to this thing as much as you have to navigate the professional playing element of
Yeah.
the thing.
A
So
lot of it for us is choosing our traveling partners. For you
sure.
too, like in your circumstance, like it's not, if you're taking on different jobs or whatever, like if you're in one gig, that's going to be different than two if you are taking up multiple different jobs. Because then, like, you know, you also have to get along with all of those different people you're working with if you're not used to working with them. So
And you have to read the room. Like I said, you can be the greatest drummer or guitar player in the world, but if you're not right for that camp, as we kind of refer to the different bands, every camp has its own flavor, its own vibe, so to speak. If it has, the puzzle pieces have to fit, and that's something I've kind of done as a band leader. You kind of have to get good at people and figuring out, well, we need the player to be able to pull this off authentically, but they have to also gel with the type of guys or
yeah.
girls we are on the bus. Like it just has to
I
work.
think it'll become more like that with the team stuff.
Yeah, right. And that's
As
it's been
team
so
grows,
fascinating to watch that.
that element will change. Right now, it's that element is there within the Brazilians. They live together, but
Sure.
also like within groups that travel together. On the weekends, you get groups of guys. That are going 3 or 4 people. Basically we're touring too, so we're gonna go with you know, but with the team concept, and then that matters, especially too when you consider, okay, like you're talking about, like you're gonna have injuries and you have fill-in spots, like who are they gonna
Right.
have fill in, that
Are
kind
they
of
going to fill in? What role do they kind of
yeah.
play with the
Yeah.
dynamics of the team?
You don't
It
want
all
somebody to
matters.
come in that like doesn't get along with people. Then
No.
it's like, man, whatever limited rule they're about to play, it ain't gonna be good.
Yeah, no, doesn't it doesn't pan out. It's been fun though as a fan, I'll tell you. I know obviously growing pains and opinions and things, but as a fan, it's been something really fun to witness the development of the teams.
It's unique.
Just in terms of also seeing just the guys on each team riding, to see a vet or multi-time world champ with a guy that it's his first couple of years with his car, or like whatever in the touring pros and whatever get drafted come up, it's just neat to see the dynamic range of all of it and see how those guys come together. And from being a fan of the sport, it's been really fun to witness all of that, and it's exciting. So
I
it's
I'm
fun to
I'm
watch. And
in agreement, especially like me. I come from a sports background. You probably definitely did being on the East Coast because so that's intriguing as well. So me and you seem to sports were probably
yeah,
really big in kind of that area, but you go out west, there's college football and that's about it. I don't know. There's
yeah,
other
no, I
stuff,
mean,
but we're really in on the East Coast it's even bigger. Like it's a
yeah, I
huge
played sports
sport.
every season, and I know like a lot of people this one time at band camp, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Not everyone thinks of musicians as being like that, but I think that's why. I mean, touring has felt pretty easy to me because I'm pretty good at being on a team. I've
Yeah.
baseball, football, a little bit of soccer, um, tennis, golf. I skied competitively. Like I've just been involved with team sports my whole life,
Whole life,
and
yeah.
so that part of it came a little bit natural to me. But you're right. I can definitely relate through that.
I think a lot of I
Certainly
know
helped me.
a lot of bull riders don't. That's been one of the biggest shockers to me is how many rodeo individuals have nothing to do with anything outside of rodeo.
Right,
Like
but
I know
all
guys who,
considering,
they're fit. This is their life. This is their dream. They ride bulls, and then they go to the sale barn and they work all day,
yeah,
and that is life at its best. Like they don't want anything.
amen,
They don't want anything
amen.
more than that. They don't want anything more than that. They
But
have
that sounds
they have
pretty
some
good to me.
land.
That's
They
awesome.
can go hunting. They can ride their horse all day.
Yeah, I'm trying to
That's
figure
it.
that out one day. I kind of want that balance.
That's
I got a little more work to do, but I'm working towards it myself in a way.
I
But I get it. I get it. But I know I'm not taking anything away from those guys that truly have lived that way their whole lives. It is the dream, and I think people get hung up on whether it's music or bull riding. Like when you're getting into it, I imagine people put fame or notoriety or something on this pedestal, and I know that that's what comes with being excellent at something is being recognized for it, hopefully in the right ways. um but at the end of the day, you have to want it because it's something you're passionate about and truly brings you happiness. And I think that whether you're a bull rider, whether you're a musician, whether you're a paramedic, or you're a real estate agent, if you're lucky enough to do something in life or pursue, maybe not even get to do it, but if you're lucky enough to have the opportunity to pursue a passion and get paid for it, or one day hope to be paid for it, that's a blessing in itself. Not to sound like a Hallmark card, but I mean that really at the end of the day. And that's something I've been focusing a lot on in the last few years. You're always sort of chasing the marquee when you first start, and then you realize, no, it's the process, it's the craft, and it's the people you do it with that I
yeah.
think at the end of the day really speaks a lot, speaks the most, I think. And if
I
you're
think
lucky enough to be able to pursue that, I mean, you
yeah,
got it
and
all.
I think you have to fall in love with the process because that's really at the end of
Definitely.
the day, you're the majority of your time is gonna be spent in that. And
Yep.
I know there's some people that maybe like what that process affords them, like or whatever. That's the ultimate goal, and they're willing to do anything. And I think that's fine too. But I think holistically, you're going to be happier in life overall if you can find something where the process is something you really enjoy, and then
Absolutely.
you know, then you go off of that, and then that'll open the doors for whatever. But like, I think that you'll just enjoy life better. My sister, she enjoys the process of school, being a teacher, and having
Yeah.
the process of every day
Awesome.
having a relationship with students, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boom. You're gonna be happier doing that than if you found something that like, okay, I don't like what it's gonna take to get here, but I'm willing to do it because of the money. You're gonna be less satisfied.
100%. I to that point, you used to, like I said, chasing the marquee. Or it feels so ridiculous to say it and admit it out loud at this point, but I used to think, or at least I used to feel like some way, if I did this, if I accomplished this, then I will have this baseline level of happiness that will just carry me through the rest of my days. Like
Yeah.
that will be, if I can just get myself to that, at least that tier. Might not be this tier, but if I can get myself to this tier, at least I'll be afforded this sense of accomplishment and this happiness that will somehow carry me through. I just want to get there. And then you get there and you realize you want the next thing. Not in a bad way, not in a greedy way, but you play, yeah, I have yet to play Madison Square Garden, but one day. But you play a big venue like that, or you do something epic, or the younger version of you would have perceived as making it, and you do it, and then you wake up the next morning and you're like, okay, well, amazing, thrilled, happy. You've all the right affirmations and validations. I'm not taking anything away from accomplishing something you work hard for, but it doesn't sustain, like, it happens and then you're on to the next thing. So what really matters? It's the relationships in your life, it's the people, it's all the other stuff that you have to build to support this one thing you've been working on. And I think
That's
that's
honestly that you
I
just said
mean, you know what I mean?
that was the point. So the point in my life where I actually really started owning my faith in Jesus Christ and really like understanding, purpose, and my life turned around was in 2017 when I competed at the AT&T Stadium, and it was my first UTB event. Actually at the time it was the Build for Tough series. And so
Yep.
it was
I was
my
gonna say, yeah.
first major. I think that maybe with the first year they did it at AT&T, and there was like it was sold out. There was like 70,000 people. It was a major deal, and I had finally reached that point that I had trained for that long, and it wasn't what I thought it would be, and it was such a letdown. Like it really tore me up,
Yeah,
and it was an experience where I felt like God was saying, "Hey, I want to use you." But you cannot continue to go down this road, and you're not going to find fulfillment in what you thought you were going to find fulfillment in. And
heavy. I mean, that's like a,
it's
yeah,
it's a real thing, and then you start realizing like, okay, the reality is that we serve a much greater purpose than these things that we're chasing. So
doing. Yeah, I
yeah.
think I couldn't agree more. I think you start to find again the process, but you find the meaning and the ripple effect of it all, you know?
And on the back end of that though, okay, so on the front end of that, like, okay, that sucks then because then you're saying that if I reach this, that I won't find satisfaction out of it and fulfillment. That's not true. What is true is if you find purpose in what you're actually have purpose in, as being an image of God, and
Yes.
reflecting that image in our relationships, and in it, all of a sudden you actually find a enjoyment and an accomplishment from succeeding in that area. You'll find
Sure.
fulfillment that is sustainable because it's within the proper context. Your whole life doesn't purpose isn't around that. But
Totally.
then you're like, okay, my purpose. Then if you when you get to those circumstances, maybe you drop the ball and fail. Maybe you
Sure.
fail on that big
Sure.
stage. Then
Yep.
you even enjoy that and that process more. So
Sure.
I think you are right, and I think that's what most people don't know. It's like once you do reach to that point, it's not quite what it seems.
It's not, but it doesn't mean, but to your point, it doesn't mean that
No,
you just don't realize you're going to find the redemption or the meaning of it in a different part of that process, in a
correct.
different part of that
Yeah.
experience. It's not in the look what I did part of it, or look what you did to yourself part of it. It's the people, it's the way you frame that in a different way for others, and the purpose in that. I
Well,
think
another
absolutely.
thing for me with my kids, going back to that is just because it's kind of causing me to reflect on like, being a father makes me reflect on, okay, what am I doing because people are seeing this? And
Right.
so like with me choosing to have kids while I ride, some people choose to wait until they're done riding to have kids.
Sure.
And I chose to because I knew the struggles in which I face to accomplish what I want to accomplish. And I
Sure.
want my children to be able to see that. So,
Sure.
at the end of the day, like, you know, I can't really just quit, like
Sure.
I need to
In
at
a
least
beautiful way.
follow
That's amazing.
through. I need to, follow through with what I want to and want to accomplish. And I want that to be a, opportunity to be able to teach my children, in the same capacity. So, I think that the big thing for kids coming up is preparing them for, hey, your purpose here in this world is much greater than, you know, your accomplishments or, what you do. Like you're worth more than, your failures and your successes, as far as worldly stuff. So, you know,
I think
enjoy
that's
the process.
insight.
Enjoy the process, because it changes too, and you'll find that there's different processes in life that you fall in love with as you go.
Sure. Yeah,
But
definitely. I couldn't agree more. We could talk about that for a whole nother
yeah,
podcast.
no, for
But
sure. Yeah.
you're so correct about that. Yeah. I'm just enjoying the same with me, the process of every show, every week, no matter what it is or who it's for, and let that carry deep on every level. It's just awesome.
Well, maybe next time, like when I'm, coming through or something, we cross paths. We can do one in the rodeo wagon. But
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. I just appreciate you wanting to take time to talk to a drummer who's interested in
it's
your world and everything,
there's
Western
so
sports and Western
there's so much
lifestyle.
there's so much more we can talk about and get into. I love it, and I'm all about like learning about all of these different careers and passions that people have, and how similar, like there's similarities in all of it, especially when you
Totally.
get into a professional level. It's kind of cool. And you getting to actually, it's I never thought I'd be having a podcast with a guy that was part of the band, performing at,
X,
uh,
Y, and Z.
yeah, right. Like that's just
Hey,
cracking up.
but
Let
it's funny where
alone,
life.
that same individual would be the same person pushing the freaking, yeah, the steer that the freaking Longhorn at Fort
Yeah,
Worth.
hopefully not.
Yeah, the
Not
Longhorns
having
at
to
Fort
run
Worth.
up into people on the side of the street is the goal. Yeah.
That's that was the wildest thing. Like I was talking to Kenny. I think you talked to
Yeah.
Kenny,
And he's
and
great.
he was telling me about that, and I was just like, wait a minute, what?
No, it's hey, I just anything I can get into during the week that's going to feed that beast for me, I'm all about it. So if anyone out there, if you need any help or feel like taking someone under your wing, let me know. I just want to learn and be a part of it. That's all.
That's awesome. Well, heck yeah. Well, we'll definitely do it again sometime, and it's been awesome having you. What are your social media handles? Like, where can people follow you?
Yeah, I think pretty much on everything. I will say I'm on everything. I really work mainly through Instagram, but it's just at Jimmy Elcock. My last name, Jimmy, Jimmy, last name Elcock, Elcock. Believe it or not, my real last name. You can find me there. And just message me. I love to be an open book and connect and whatnot. So feel free to reach out. Anybody, music, whatever it is, life. Always happy to connect.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It was awesome getting to talk to you, and I look forward to doing it again, and getting to meet you sometime, because that would be cool.
Definitely. You have to come out to a show, buddy.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I definitely will. So we'll stay in touch. So for sure.
Perfect.
All
Perfect.
right, sounds good.
Kyle, really appreciate the time. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Keep in touch. And anybody who's listening, truly thank you for tuning in and letting me be a part of this experience. It's awesome.
Heck yeah. See you guys later.